Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham sharanam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dhammam sharanam gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami. Sangham Sharanam Gacchami.
Damba Jumden de Shawan Jumba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Rigba da Jabzo Demba Dewara Sheva Jigden Jemba Jebu Dube Kalu Jurwa Lana Meva Lada Minamje Dumba Sanje Jumden de Pejawa Shaja Tuba La Chazel Jodo Jabzo Je Ho Dumba Jumden de Shin Shewa Chajumba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Rigwa Dan Shabzo Demba Dewara Shiba Jigden Jemba Jibu Dube Kalu Gyurwa Lana Meva Lada Menamje Dumba Sanje Shumden De Pejawa Shaja Tuba La Chazelo Chudo Jabzo Che Ho Dumba Shumden De Dishin Sheba Chajumba Yandaba Zobe Sanje Rigba Dan Shabzo Demba Dewara Sheba Jigden Jemba Jibu Dube Kalu Gyurwa Lana Meba Lada Menamje Domba Sanje Shumden De Pejawa Shaja Tuba La Chanzelo Chudo Jaso Che Ho Sanje Chudan Soje Chonama La Chanshu Bado Tane Kyaso She Tagi Chushe Jibe Sonamanje Dola Penche Sanje Drobara Sho Sanje Chudan Soje Chonama La Janju Bado Dane Jaso Che Tagi Chushe Jibe Sonamanje Dola Penche Sanje Drobara Sho Sanje Chudan Soje Chonama La Janju Bado Dane Jaso Che Tagi Chushe Jibe Sonamanje Dola Penche Sanje Drobara Sho Good morning, everyone. And I'm just looking out. And it looks like a very fine day. And in terms of temperature, I think today is the most pleasant day so far since the beginning of winter. I haven't gone out for a walk for some time. So maybe this afternoon I can go out for a walk. So this is change. It's because of impermanent nature. So the benefit of things being impermanent, things that are subject to change, is that we can have a pleasant weather. Sometimes we feel that it's kind of stagnant. It's kind of set in. But things do change. So that's why the meditation on impermanence is one of the main practices in Buddhism. One can employ that method in all kinds of fields. The most effective is to drive us or propel us to practice Dharma, not just to practice Dharma, but to practice Dharma purely, and also not to leave Dharma practice later if we have gained real insight into the impermanent nature of things. Then we will be able to prioritize our Dharma practice over everything. Right now, we tend to push our Dharma practice to the last. Dharma practice becomes the least of our priority. It's simply because that we don't have this feeling of urgency to practice Dharma. We feel that we have plenty of time. That's why we always make plans. I will do Dharma practice when I retire. I will do Dharma practice when I made enough money. I will do my Dharma practice after my children are grown up. I will do my Dharma practice after I finish this project. But the question is, does the death wait for us to finish our projects? Does the death say that, oh, I can see that you have young children to take care of. You have old parents to take care of. I will not come now. Does the death say that? Will the death say that? Unfortunately, no. It will come knocking at our door when the time comes. So, meditating on the impermanent nature of our life, that our life can end any moment, is a very effective means to drive us to practice Dharma. The realization into the impermanent nature of things is also an effective way to practice patience. So sometimes when we encounter difficulties, we get the sense that I am stuck here forever. There is no way out. That's why during pandemic, many people experience depression and anxiety because they feel that they are stuck there. But it's because it's impermanent, because it doesn't have its own, independent. It is dependent on causes and conditions. It doesn't have its own freedom. It doesn't have its own choice. As and when causes and conditions change or propel them to transform or change, it changes. So at the moment, even the pandemic seems to be that what do you call that intense era is over. Everywhere they are relaxing the restrictions. So this shows that things do not remain stagnant. It will change, no matter how inescapable or how deep we feel we are stuck in a problem. It will always change. So that's one way to practice enduring the patience when it comes to enduring the sufferings. And even our enemies, when it comes to our enemies, that person can also change. Our arch enemy can become our best friends. If we are able to treat the person in a different way, there is chance that the person can become our friend, no matter how much harm that person has caused us, how disdainful that person may appear to be. So you see from these examples that reflecting or contemplating on the impermanent nature of things has so much benefit. So anyway, that's just a general talk. So now, getting back onto where we stopped last class. Remember, this was the stanza that was missing from the slides. In brief, there is nobody, or nobody. Americans would say nobody, isn't it? There is nobody who lives happily with anger. Hence, the enemy, anger, creates sufferings such as this. So sometimes I feel silly elaborating on this, because now that these are translated in English, it is kind of self-explanatory. So you don't really need elaboration. But if it were in Tibetan verses, then it requires explanation, because the way it is written in Tibetan, not many people will understand. Especially lay people will have difficulty deciphering the meaning and understanding. But when it is in English, it is so simple. You just read it and you get the idea. So anyway, there may be some who finds it helpful when I elaborate on this. So I will continue engaging in a repetition, which some of you may find it a bit waste of time, but I apologize for that if you feel that way. So anyway, we have already discussed. So in the brief summary is that there is nobody who will experience happiness, who will have peace of mind when one is under the sway of anger or hatred. So as long as anger becomes our, anger dominates our life, there is no peace. There is no calm state of mind. It is always problematic, always unpleasant experience. So that's why it is called enemy. The way our conventional enemies can make our life difficult, this anger makes our life even worse. So it creates suffering such as this. This is what we have discussed before. So that's the summary of the faults of anger. So here it is very important. By now you notice that whenever in Buddhist texts, whenever they teach a topic, either they will begin extolling the benefits or discussing the flaws or the disadvantages of that particular emotion or whatever that topic is. This is such a very, effective way to lead the practitioners, because why we fail to adopt any antidote or to counter these destructive emotions is that sometimes we fail to realize the destructive nature of these emotions, how much damage this causes. And we fail to recognize that these are the real enemies. And we have been harboring inside. We are harboring them within us. And we are actually treating them like a special guest. We just follow every instructions given by these destructive emotions. So we tend not to realize that that's the real anger. That's the real enemy. So this way of, this technique, this way of introducing the topic is very powerful. So once we realize the negativities or the faults of these emotions, then we will start to look for ways to remove that. On the other hand, we also need to see the benefits of that countering emotion, which is the patience, the antidote that counters anger and hatred. So it says, "Gangshi timde cho jomba dinin dedan shendu des." So now we are discussing the benefits of adopting patience or practicing patience. But whoever assiduously overcomes it finds happiness now and hereafter. So on the other hand, we talked about all that negative impacts of anger and hatred. So now, on the other hand, those who practice the antidote, which is the patience, that person, whoever practices or whoever overcomes the anger, will find happiness not only in this life, but also in the future lives. So, no need to go into details. We know that people who are more tolerant, who have abundance of patience, tend to be happier because there is less thing to bother that person. There is less thing to irritate. There is less thing to frustrate. So when there is less thing to cause frustrations, there will be less disappointments. When there is less disappointment, there is less reason to be unhappy. So following that logic, we can say with confidence that a person who is more tolerant can be happier compared to those who are not. And then hereafter, the life after this, let's not talk about nirvana and enlightenment. Even if we wish to secure a good rebirth, we need to at least observe the ethical discipline. So when you go through these all kinds of ethical disciplines, for instance, the bare minimum is to observe the 10, refraining from the 10 non-virtue. So when you go through the 10 non-virtue, imagine if you have anger issue, if you are angry all the time, if a tiniest thing can agitate you, turns you into an enraged person, how can that person observe these 10 non-virtues? Like killing, when you are in anger, you have no control. For instance, if a mosquito, luckily over here, is not a common thing, but in India, when you sleep, mosquitoes really bother you. And then if you have anger issue, the first thing you want is to eliminate that. So you engage in the act of killing. Stealing, I don't know how is that directly connected. But the other speech ones, harsh speech, and lying, when you are angry, you will say all kinds of things. Then ill intention. When you are so angry, there is likelihood that you will make more enemies. When you make more enemies, then hatred will find place in you. Hatred towards that person, this person. So it will be very difficult to really observe these 10 refraining from this 10 non-virtue, and then engaging in the other 6 perfections is very difficult. So in order to even secure a good rebirth, we need to fight. We need to overcome our anger. So when we do that, then there is a chance that we can create causes and conditions that can bring happiness in our future lives. So that's what it means by finds happiness, now and hereafter. So when we talk about patience, generally we think that it is all about being tolerant towards the enemy or the person that cause us harm. But patience, there are 3 types of patience. In Junjuk, in this Bodhicaryavatara, so the first kind of topic that Shantideva discussed is the patience of accepting suffering. Being able to voluntarily and courageously bear the difficulties that may be experienced in the course of Bodhisattva practice. In life, sufferings are inevitable. It's part and parcel of our existence. So, if we fail to generate this patience of accepting suffering, we will suffer even more. So that's what Shantideva will later discuss. And then the second type of patience is the patience of certitude about reality. So this one is tricky to understand because different texts explains a bit differently, but I think it all boils down to one thing, which is about understanding the nature of reality. Because when it comes to practicing patience, we need to realize the reality of things. Like enemy, the person whom we view or perceive as our enemy, first of all, how does it appear to us? Is there really an independent enemy? If there is something absolute there, then whoever sees that person can see the person as enemy. But that is not the case. To you or to us, we see that person as enemy. But to his friends, they do not see the person as enemy. They see the person as friend. And also, why do we see that person as enemy? When we see the person as enemy, we will have lots of negative views about that person. But that also, is it really existing from its own, or it is something to do with our mental projection? If it's nothing to do with our mental projection, our individual mental projection, then everybody would have the same view, but that is not the case. So when you look at these, then we realize that we see there's nothing black and white. At the moment when we are angry and when we view the person as enemy, it is really black and white. But it is not that easy. It's quite murky when you really examine closely. And also when a person causes harm to you, there are many causes and conditions need to be present. It's not just that person doing everything. First of all, we are responsible for making that person angry at us. And then that person also get angry and do all this because of the inclination or the imprints that person has. And then, of course, the role of karma. So that's the understanding. When we are able to understanding the whole issue, not just looking from one point of view, but when we are able to understand the principle of dependent origination, that way we will be able to curb our anger towards the person, also towards the situation, and thereby able to generate tolerance or patience. And then the third type of patience is the patience of disregarding harm done to you. So that is really just neglecting. Instead of getting angry at somebody who causes harms, we develop compassion towards that person. If not, at least just what do you call? Just generate tolerance. So these are three types of patience. So when it says assiduously, so here in Tibetan it's called timde. So we really strive towards overcoming it. That can be only achieved when we are able to employ the mindfulness and the introspective awareness. We must be always, we must remember not to let ourselves under the sway of anger. Not only that, we need to check constantly whether or not we are being influenced by anger, whether anger is arising within us or not. When we employ these two methods, or two, what you call, the mindfulness and introspective awareness, then we will be able to either stop completely stop anger rising completely, or we can reduce. So most of the time we are unaware when anger arises. That's why it's just instant. You hear somebody insult you, and there you are already red. You are already enraged. So there is no time. But if we are able to be mindful, then we can see anger rising. And there is this opportunity whether to let it rise or to put it down. So only through the mindfulness and the introspective awareness we can overcome it. So when you say assiduously, so that means we need to use these two to help us overcome it. So now we have already discussed the faults of the anger, the ramifications brought on to by anger, and we also talked about the benefits. So now we are looking at the causes that give rise to anger, because in order to eliminate something, in order to curb something, we need to look at the cause. That's the whole principle of Buddhist teachings. When Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, he taught these two sets of causes and conditions, causes and effect. The suffering of origin, the noble truth of suffering of origin, and then suffering of noble truth of suffering, suffering and origin of suffering, cessation and path. These are two sets based on causes and effects. So here is same. We need to figure out what is the one that gives rise to anger. What is the one that fuels our anger? Mindu chedan dobayi gekje pala chongjurba yimi tewe senyene shedan tede ta jomsos. Having found its fuel of mental unhappiness, in the prevention of what I wish for and in the doing of what I do not want, hatred increases and then destroys me. So there are two things Shantideva is mentioning here. First is identifying what gives rise to our anger, and then the consequences of that anger, what it does, how it harms us. So here it says, having found its fuel of mental unhappiness. So it's the actual cause is mental unhappiness. this sense of this dissatisfaction, this nagging feeling that something is not right, or this dissatisfaction, unhappiness. So where does this arise from? This arises when somebody or something prevent us from achieving what we want. Let's say happiness. If we want to be happy, but something obstructs that, then that thing or the person, towards that thing or that person, we become this mental arises. Let me rephrase. Mental unhappiness arises due to the person or thing that prevents what we wish for. That's one cause. Another cause is same mental unhappiness, but the reason is different. The mental unhappiness arises because in doing of what I do not want. First one is somebody obstructs or prevents one from getting what we wish for. But the other one is giving us what we don't want. So let's say harm, unpleasant experiences. So we get angry at something or someone. Why I say something is sometimes we get angry at situations. That's why sometimes we kick tables, we kick chairs. Let's say if we accidentally bump into a chair and if it hurt us, and some people kick it back, and that will cause you more harm, isn't it? More pain. But we do that because we get angry at that inanimate object. So there are two reasons that give rise to mental unhappiness, and that mental unhappiness give rise to anger and frustration and anger. So it is not just oneself. We get angry when somebody blocks happiness to us as well as our friends and our families, those who are within our circle, friends circle, or those whom you have developed attachment. So if anybody causes harm, if anybody gives harm or prevents that group from achieving that happiness, then mental unhappiness arises within us. And that gives rise to anger or hatred. And then what happens? What is the ramification? It destroys us. Shedante de ta jomsos. It destroys us in this life as well as it destroys us in the future lives. In this life, as we discussed before, the least of ramification is that it embarrasses us so much. Remember, I told you my story. When I was ridiculed, I retorted with more insults to this monk. But that monk, instead of getting angry and responding accordingly, he laughed at me. At that moment, I felt how tiny, how small, how shallow I was. And that brought so much embarrassment. Because there are onlookers, there are other monks watching that debate. So it's so embarrassing when you lose your cool. It's so embarrassing. And His Holiness, I think here, let me just read from here. It's interesting. So he says, therefore, it is clear that mental calmness is a very important factor for good health. If you want good health, don't ask a doctor. Look within yourself. Try to utilize some of your potential. This even costs less. People who have heart conditions, people who have high BP, if you have this tendency to get angry all the time, there is danger. So His Holiness is suggesting that instead of going to see a doctor, just look within yourself. Try to utilize some of your potential. This even costs less. And then he also goes on to say that, also I'm quite sure that if this 14th Dalai Lama smiled less, perhaps I would have fewer friends in various places. In order to have friends, you cannot afford to be, angry all the time. If you smile more, if you are a cheerful and happy person, you make more friends. People will naturally attracted to you. But if you are angry, how can you have a smile? Even if you want to smile, but anger overtakes it. How many relationships that I always raise this is very true. How many friendships were destroyed just at the spur, how do you put it? Just in an instant rage of anger. And how many people were killed? Because in America, you have easy access to guns. People carry guns. And then when they get angry, they just shoot it. I'm sure those people regret so much. And I won't be surprised if they regret even carrying a gun later. But that's too late. You have given into anger. So its hatred increases and then destroys me. When you kill somebody, of course, you will end up in the jail. That's for this life. But next life is another thing. So here, Shantideva is saying that we need to first identify the cause. What is giving rise to this? What is the one that is producing this? It is like if you have a leakage, you need to go to the source. Where is the actual leak? Unless and until you block that main leakage, no matter how many pots and how many sealant you put on every drop that is coming, it's not going to solve the problem. It will always find another avenue to leak. Tede thagi tawodi seni number shombracha. Dedar thala novale tadi lani le shemes. So therefore, I should totally eradicate the fuel of this enemy. For this enemy has no other function. This fuel the fuel of this enemy. For this enemy has no other function than that of causing me harm. So therefore, we need to eradicate the fuel. If you want to put down a fire, you need to stop adding fuel, isn't it? You need to stop adding more firewoods to it. The more you add, of course, the fire will keep going. Therefore, I should totally erect the fuel of enemy. So in the commentaries, the analogy given is that sometimes when destroying the enemy, they will cut the food and let them die, let them starve to death. That's a very cruel treatment. So likewise, when we put an end to that fuel, that food that is sustaining, that is giving energy to our mental unease, mental unhappiness, then there is chance that anger will be eradicated. So the question is, why are we so kind of cruel or so obsessed with eradicating this fuel? Because it says, for this enemy has no other function than that of causing me harm. The reason why we have to take these drastic actions is because, unlike other enemy, conventional enemy, they have other things to do. They are not dedicated or committed 24 hours in destroying us. They have to live a life, so they have to earn a livelihood. So they have to go to work. So that's at least 8 hours. They need to sleep. They need to eat. They need to do other things. But when it comes to anger, it has only one job. The job description is to destroy us. So that's their goal. That's their whole purpose. So that's why it says, because of that reason, because that this inner enemy called the hatred or anger has only one function, that is to cause harm, to destroy us. So because of that, we need to cut off the fuel that is sustaining and giving life into that mental dissatisfaction, which results into anger. Tede thagi tawo te seni number shombar cha. Now that's finished. Tede thala nyobale tadila ni le shemes. Yimi chila pabjan thagi ni gawe yini tu meja. Miga che jan do me tu kewatani nyambar churus. So from the previous stanzas, we know that the cause is that mental suffering or unease or dissatisfaction. So here is saying that we should never ever become dissatisfied or in that mode of unease or mental suffering. In Tibetan called yimete. Whatever befalls me, I shall not disturb my mental joy. For having been made unhappy, I shall not accomplish what I wish, and my virtue will decline. So because of the above discussed ramifications, those negative consequences, so now we are making a decision here that no matter how challenging it is, even if your head to be cut for no reason, he says, I will never lose that peace of mind. I will not replace my mental joy with that mental suffering. The reason is because for having been made unhappy, I shall not accomplish what I wish. He said, even if I get unhappy, even if I get so angry at that person or that thing, I shall not accomplish what I wish. Whatever I wanted to accomplish, I won't be able to accomplish. Miga chejang do me drups. So if there is an obstruction, if the person has created that obstruction, so even if you become unhappy, that will not contribute towards accomplishing your goal. Instead, it can hinder. It becomes impediment to achieving our goals. Not only it will obstruct, not only it will thwart our goal, it will also destroy the virtues, because we seek happiness. The very reason why we are angry at the other person is because that person is destroying our happiness. Since we want happiness and we don't want suffering, the other person is, in our view, doing the exact opposite. So that's why we get mad at the other person. But here is saying that if we get angry, the virtue that give rise to happiness will be destroyed. The very purpose of our hard work will be destroyed because we work towards achieving happiness. But our action of getting angry at the person, losing our cool, is actually destroying that very cause and condition that give rise to happiness. So therefore, we are making this determination. We are pledging that never ever I will let myself destroy this mental joy. I will never let this dissatisfaction, this unhappiness take over my mental joy. Kedi chosu yonani telamiga chishigyu, kedi chosu menani telamiga chechi pins. So now, what is the logical reason? What is the basis, the rationality regarding that we shouldn't let ourselves, overpowered by this dissatisfaction and unhappiness? So this is the reason. Why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So this is one of my favorites, and I think favorites of many people. And I shared before that when I lost my father to cancer, this really helped me get through, because I was very close to my father, because I lost my mother when I was only 4 months old. But of course, my mother's sister took the role of my mother. But still, I was very close with my father. And I remember my father taking me everywhere when I was young, at his work. And I remember that when at home, my father was a carpenter. So I will be just watching him do his carpentry work. The whole day I can watch him. So because of that, just watching him, I know how to, I know what you call carpentry work just by watching my father. And recently, when I moved here, because I have an empty garage, so I needed a table, the Tibetan design table. And since I have watched my father make that table, I don't know, many times, so I tried, and it came out quite acceptable. So anyway, so that just to illustrate how close I was with my father. So it was very difficult. So this really helped me. Why be unhappy? So my being unhappy and sad about losing my father, will it bring him back? It will not. He's gone. And then instead what happened is, if I display sadness and unhappy, it will affect the people around me. And I have to be the shoulder for my mother and my sister to lean on. So it does not help me in being sad about that. But of course, if this helps, then of course, I can be sad for months and months, but that's useless. And since there's nothing can be done about it, so no point. So this is this stanza you can apply in every situation, almost every situation. We tend to worry so much. Like pandemic, what will happen? When will this be over? But the question is, your worrying and being anxious about this will stop the pandemic, will make the pandemic disappear or end. It will not. But what it will does, what surely it does, is that it will affect us negatively. It will make us more anxious, and then it can develop into anxiety, kind of a disorder, and that may develop into depression. So that's one way. And then, as I mentioned before, suffering is inevitable in our existence. We will lose our loved ones. We will encounter unfortunate situations. But if we are unable to adopt an attitude that can help in coping these tragedies, it will cause more harm. So when we use this is applicable. That's why Junjuk is known to be very pragmatic. So this thing, this you can apply any situation. So it's so true. Why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? If there's something that can be done, then just go and try to do those things. If you need to get, let's say, some groceries, why worry? Just go and get the groceries. That's done. If whatever you want is not available in that shop, try to look for other place, look at other places. If no grocery shops carry that, then why worry? Because your worrying won't result into supermarkets, deciding to bring this for you. It will not happen. Okay, I think we will stop here because from this onwards is a kind of another topic. So maybe before we end today's session, maybe we should do a bit of a meditation. Are you up to? Okay, let's try to do a short meditation on this topic. So as usual, adopt a comfortable posture with your back straight. Most important thing is just you need to be comfortable wherever you are sitting. Either you are sitting on a chair or you are sitting on the floor. It doesn't matter as long as your back is straight and you are comfortable. So with that, try to bring your mind inward. Try to focus your mind on your breath. You can choose any focal point. It could be your nostrils where you feel the sensation when you breathe in and out. Or it could be your belly where you feel the sensation of its rising and falling when you breathe in and out. So you choose a focal point and then just rest your mind on that focal point. Just breathe in and out while resting your mind on that object, whichever you have decided. You may notice that your mind wanders. When this happens, just simply bring your mind back onto the object and continue resting your mind on that focal point. Now let's do a bit of analytical meditation on what you have heard so far. So let's focus on the faults of anger, what anger does to us in this very life as well as in the future lives. How anger makes us look or appear ugly no matter how much makeup we have put on our faces. The moment when anger takes over, our face turns into something scary and ugly. You can bring in from your own experience of other persons that you have witnessed, and also how anger and hatred can even affect our sleep, how harboring anger and hatred within us can prevent us from having a good night's rest. How a moment of anger can destroy friendships, relationships, how out of anger can make us use harsh words that can cut others' heart. In short, how anger can destroy our peace of mind. And as long as we give into anger, there is no happiness, there is no peace of mind. Bring in from your own experience how anger destroys your peace of mind. Now make a strong resolve that I shall never let myself fall under the sway of such intense anger and hatred. Because if I do that, I will suffer all these consequences: lose my peace of mind, lose my composure, assume an ugly physical appearance, and so on. Make that decision and remain in an absorbed meditation on this conclusion as long as you can. Okay, thank you. So let's do the dedication prayers. Say the dedication prayers. Dagi jinye zabe gyawa de tendan jowa kunla kangben dan kebara chuzun losan tabai tembe nyingbo ringdo seje sho. I just remembered to make this announcement. So next class, I think it's going to be on the 6th of March. So I have to cancel that class because it's the week of Tibetan New Year, and I see that there are some events on the second and third day of Losar. So there will be no class. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. So let's continue with our dedication prayers. Jambe bawe jedara jamba da gundo zambo deya deshendo dada kunge jesu talovich gewa deda damje rabdo ngo dezon shekbe gewa damje ge ngowa kanla shodo ngaba dagi gewe zawan degun ja sambo chuji rabdo ngowar ge. Thank you.